Hello, and welcome back to the Utah Tech Leads Leadership Series. Today, we are joined by Sara Jones. Hi, Sara. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course, it's great to have you here. So, tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
My name is Sara Jones, and I am the head of, well, I run Inclusion Pro, which is my own consulting firm. And Inclusion Pro, we work with executives, national companies to create global DEI strategies. So it involves a lot of business strategy as well as what I call emotional strategy, right? I actually call it some of the hardest business strategy to do because, it just the nature of DEI work can get very personal and emotional. And so you have to, you know, um, approach it with certain sensitivities in order to bring the whole company along. So we can talk more about that and the specific ways that we do that. But thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. So, tell us a little bit about your history in the Utah Tech sphere.
Yeah, for those who don't know me, my most of my career has been in tech, and so gosh, this takes me back, oh gosh, over 30 years. I got into tech. I was raised in Utah, and I had a teacher that sent me to engineering state, and I had always loved math, science, all of those classes. But at engineering state up at Utah State University, I learned what an engineer actually did. That was the first time I actually understood about those careers, and I got excited about these opportunities to have a really great pathway that was able to leverage my, intellectual capacities, but also, I mean, honestly, make a great salary, right? So chemical engineers at the time were in high demand, and so I chose that career pathway in college. And then went through a recession after I graduated from college and decided to go through law school to increase my hiring abilities. And I did patent law, and it was in 2001 when I started my patent law career. And patent attorneys were very much in demand, and so I spent 10 years doing mostly software patents. Although as a chemical engineer, I was able to do medical, dental, chemical, mechanical, a wide range of inventions. Then I left law and made partner and said, okay, what else can I do with my career to have an impact? And I spent the next 10 years ish doing tech startups in educational technology, HR technology, and just a wide range of consulting and really experiencing that startup world. Recently, I was able to form my own consulting firm to be able to do diversity, equity, inclusion, and really, roll up my sleeves with executive leaders in what does it really take to create cultural shifts. And because I had seen, I guess I should mention that I'm one of the original founders of Women Tech Council, which I started back when I was practicing law. And through that work of building a community over, 15 years and seeing the shifts and the changes in our Utah landscape around business, specifically technology and careers for women, I was able to see just a lot of different ways that companies are approaching diversity, equity, inclusion. Some things weren't working out well, some things were. And so I was able to bring all that business experience now to be able to do consulting at the executive level with leaders in their tech companies and beyond tech companies, actually, many different industries.
So, you've seen a lot of the ins and outs between the engineering and the patent law, and now startups in your own firm. So, tell us a little bit about what you've seen to be like the most successful leadership qualities throughout your career.
I think an amazing leadership quality is the ability to learn. And I think for some leaders, they get to a certain stage in their career and they feel like, oh, I've made it right. Now they're the mentor, right? They're bestowing their knowledge on other people. And I just, like to take an approach of I'm a lifelong learner. And if you are a lifelong learner, you also acknowledge I don't know everything, right? There's still things that I can learn. I can constantly improve, and this ability to continue to improve your own leadership skills throughout your entire career, I think is a true skill set, and not everybody naturally has it. I think leaders can be taught it, but certainly they need to be, willing to get that feedback to be able to continually improve their own skills. And so when I'm working specifically on diversity, equity, inclusion, I'm not looking actually for leaders to already know it or to have mastered diversity, equity, inclusion. And oftentimes, most executives have gone through their entire career without a lot of exposure to diversity, equity, inclusion. And so there's that, there's that natural learning gap. And some leaders are afraid, right, to kind of go into that space because they don't know what they don't know. And there may be a little bit of fear and apprehension. Some leaders are able to go through that learning curve, right? And so I would say the willingness and ability to be a lifelong learner is the greatest skill that I look for.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. And in that vein, how do you stay up to date on all of the different trends and things that are happening within the community and within your own career?
I think that in diversity, equity, inclusion, it's interesting because, I started really caring about diversity, equity, inclusion literally the minute I started my career. When I stepped into industry, and I was like, "Whoa, it's going to be a lot harder than I thought." As a woman, ethnic minority, and so I've seen a lot of things shift over the decades. There are DEI trends that get very trendy, and the trick is to kind of like look past the trend and understand, is it truly making impact? So what I do now is I'm really trying to stay closely engaged with my clients and really understand what's working for them in their culture and how do they know? Because if we're not really looking at that deep level of true impact, then it's just a trend, right? But it might feel easy, like for example, the Rooney Rule, right? Feels really easy to apply, easy to understand, but doesn't make a real impact, not really. And so it's really understanding the difference between a trend versus true sustainable practices. And oftentimes those are more tied to leadership skills than just something that you can just plop right into your company, right? And it won't really make that big of an impact.
Yeah. So have you seen networking and mentoring kind of evolve through that process? Is that something that you utilize within your client companies to help kind of absorb that kind of information?
Yeah, I would say that I am more of a less of a consultant and more of a coach and mentor to leaders. And I have to really draw on those skills because um, they want guidance. They don't need to be told everything that they have, they don't need to be told what to do, but they need guidance. They need someone to be a sounding board, to maybe nudge them a little bit in a direction where they can avoid, things that I've seen, right, that don't work, but be nudged in the right direction. And it's honestly, and it really fun to go in and really mentor leaders. I get mentored as well, right? Because I get to see what are the things they're struggling with, right? I mean, it is hard to be an executive and integrate diversity, equity, inclusion. And I think a lot of, you know, entry level employees, mid level employees may not really understand how hard it is to be an executive, to have all those responsibilities and integrate it. They may jump to conclusions, be critical of their executives, things like that. So it's helped me build a lot of empathy for what leaders are going through. I mean, it's been a rough few years, let's be real. So I think the more empathy we can have, the more we can actually come together and help each other out in this journey.
Absolutely. That sounds very time consuming, and I can only imagine how stressful that can be. So, how do you balance your personal life and your professional life?
Well, the great thing as a consultant is that I'm there when my clients need me. But generally, I'm there to try to help build capacity. So, I mean, it kind of feels weird, Elizabeth, right? But I'm trying to put myself out of a job. So, the more I can build capacity within leadership, the more that they will eventually be able to say, "Oh, okay, really, you're helping me build a set of skills, right?" And so, once we start to see and develop those skills, it's like it's like watching someone develop, right? It's crawl, walk, run, and being able to build and scale that across the organization. So, I feel like I have the best of both worlds because I get to go in and have influence in leadership levels, which is I frankly where I think you actually accelerate the ability to have change happen, but I also don't have to do all the work, right? We build the infrastructure for that to happen. We make sure they're equipped for all of that to happen, and then they're off running on their own. And so, you know, they're really doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but it's because they finally understand the direction, the trajectory, why they're doing it, and everyone's better engaged. And so I kind of have the best of both worlds, right? I get to provide the guidance that I think will give them the best solutions, but also, you know, have plenty of time to be able to focus on my own self-care. I actually want to touch on that just for a minute because I think diversity, equity, inclusion, you know, we had mentioned how it really has this emotional layer on it that I think is unique. I think than some other roles. Not that being an executive is hard at all, um, but I think that it's how you have the potential to burn out more than other leaders, and it is a high turnover role. And so I think that being able to not take on the weight of the world, right, is really important. Self-care, taking breaks, getting exercise when you can, and not trying to overwhelm yourself and do too much, right? There's a lot of problems to be solved in the world, but not trying to solve them all and doing what you can. It's kind of a piece of mentorship that I always try to provide to other DEI leaders and companies and consultants.
So, if you had one piece of advice to tell the baby version of yourself, what would you tell them?
The baby version of myself was always worried and was always sort of in survival mode. And I think that I was always worried about my opportunities. And I think I would tell them, show up, be consistent. You have the grit, you have the determination, you have all of the talents that you need. You're not less talented than anyone else. And those opportunities will come. And it's taken me a while to learn. So I've had a lot of career transitions over my career. And I remember the first few transitions were absolutely terrifying. Just, oh my gosh, I just would go into a crisis and identity crisis. Um, and now that I've been kind of through, you know, I would say half my career now, I actually take those transition times now whenever there's sort of a lull or a transition, or I'm just kind of like, okay, what am I going to do next? I now actually kind of lean into that a little bit and just kind of enjoy that space more. And before, I just wouldn't ever give myself that chance to relax, to just think and process. It was always sort of, you know, this kind of survival mode. Now, look, I get that, gosh, I sound really privileged now to be able to say, gosh, you know, now I just taking a month off isn't that big of a deal. And I get if you know someone isn't really in that position, and for sure I was trying to like make sure that I was, you know, providing for my needs and my family needs and all of those things. But I do think that people are far more talented and have far more opportunities than they usually think they do. And luckily in Utah, we live in a, you know, state where there are so many opportunities, right? The economy generally is pretty good. And so I do think that if you're showing up, being consistent, and creating impact everywhere you go, that comes back to benefit you in the long run.
Absolutely. So, tell us a little bit about why you decided to support UTL.
Yeah, I the this is something that I wish I had learned far earlier in my career, that our economy is really dependent on strong businesses, strong policy, strong education, right? Like all of the things in our economy are interconnected. There's not a business that just exists on its own, right? And we do have to care about the decisions that are creating this environment that allows us to thrive. Most of the things that I've really kind of cared about over my career are things like talent pipeline, right? From founding Women Tech Council and saying, okay, how do we get more women from the classroom all the way into board leadership, right? That's a big lift. That's a lot. But there's also so many other things that we need to care about. And especially, in the past few years, this integration of social, you know, uh, social unrest and justice and all of these concerns that we really cannot keep outside of the workplace anymore, right? Our employees just don't want to work for companies that don't seem like they care. And so I have just found the more I get into the policy side of things, the more I'm a little bit shocked at maybe how disconnected some of our economic sectors are. And
Mhm.
I think that it's really important that we come together to solve these problems together, and that policy decisions are not being made in isolation without stakeholders at the table. I mean, it seems like it's logical sense, like in our businesses, right? When we run teams, we say, gosh, when you make a business decision, bring the stakeholders together. I think the same is true in policy because our state is a business, right? It's a very large business, and frankly, our state hires more employees than most companies in Utah. And so when it comes to policy, we've got to have that same mindset, bring the stakeholders together, right? Bring the diverse ideas together. How can we solve problems together? And I think Utah Tech Leads is one of those organizations that's really trying to bridge those silos that can tend to form and form those true partnerships that really help all of us thrive. And I think when we come together, it's not that we're always going to agree, but look, I think we can come to common values and we can come to agreements that will help everyone. And oftentimes, we're just letting fear hold us back. So I appreciate the work that Utah Tech Leads is doing to bring people together, legislators, tech leaders, and say, hey, let's make a great state together. And I really wish for more of that across the entire state.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate your leadership in this organization and across the state. You've made a huge impact already.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to talking to you again soon.
Okay.